So why does God choose this idea of putting his Spirit inside of us, giving us new desires, the desires of God, the desires of the Spirit? Why does he choose this rather than the very safe, intuitive method of putting a big law between us and the activity? Because as a parent, this is a go-to method, like getting something, putting it off limits. In our house, we don't just leave candy on the table free for people to grab. We take that candy and it's hidden up on top of a fridge. It's natural and normal to create consequences, discipline, barriers around bad behavior in order to help people change towards good behavior and choose good behavior. So why does God choose, instead of amping up the law, why instead does he choose to remove it and replace it with an internal desire that comes from his Spirit to long for something else? Well, read with me Galatians 5:24 and 25. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step with the Spirit. And here's what God has done that he does through the Spirit that he can't do with a law. First of all, he goes after the real issue. Because as I long for sin, as I long to live in my flesh and control for myself what's good and evil and decide that that's good, no barrier or judgment against that thing is going to change the fact that that's what I want. And I'm going to look for loopholes if I can. I'm going to look for a way to get around that if I can. I'm going to lie about whether or not I took the candy. I'm going to try to figure out how to get the thing I want without getting the punishment, without getting the judgment. It hasn't fixed the problem that I'm still running towards that. So what does God do? He goes after the desire. He goes into the heart and he says, here's a new desire. Here's something else that you can want, something better, something more satisfying, something good. And he says, here's the things that the flesh wants for you. Instant gratification, things that cause pain eventually, things that we shudder and find gross eventually. He says, I'm going to pull you away from the desires of the flesh and give you new desires, things that are consistent with the character of God, things that draw you close to God, rather than things that separate you and pull you away. The second thing we see there, though, in verse 25 especially, is that our hearts now have turned our back to God and we're longing to rebel. We're longing to break away from God. We're longing to go after the role of authority in our life for ourselves and set ourselves up as kings, set ourselves up as God. And all of that is severing relationship. All of that is running away from intimacy. And then what does God do? He says, okay, I'm not going to use a law to fix this. I'm going to pursue intimacy with you to fix this. I'm going to send my Spirit to be closer connected to you than any other relationship. And the language that Paul uses to describe this is walking step in step with the Spirit. Galatians 16 through 26 talks about walking with a friend. Walk by the Spirit and be led by the Spirit. Keep in step with the Spirit. And there's this picture of the Spirit walking with us through life. He's pursued intimacy with us. He's drawn close to us. And the relationship that is broken as we rebel, he has taken the first step of bringing back and restoring, helping us turn around and walk with him. So the Spirit giving us a new desire to long for God, to long for the things that are good in life, that are satisfying, is better than just a law that tells us not to do this because of judgment. We replace the fear of judgment with faith in a loving Spirit and a good God.